So, with Sean Payton pissing off Jets fans, I had to go for the Bronco who leads the league in pissing off Jets fans. So I had to call you up, Mark.
Well, I appreciate that. You know what? Sean Payton are kindred spirits that way.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Although I haven't seen him actually put his Super Bowl ring on his middle finger and tweet it out. I haven't seen that one yet. But, maybe you should maybe you should coach him up, Mark,
Yeah, I know. But I could give him some pointers on how to really piss them off.
Well, week 5, Broncos Jets really shot up the marquee in the last week, don't you think? In all seriousness,
didn't it, though? I mean, it's exciting, and I get Sean Payton from the standpoint of getting a little full of himself and saying some things that probably are all true, but just things you don't normally do. But that's Sean Payton. Like I think he just gives zero what's about what anybody else thinks, and I think it was a way to support his quarterback and to let people here know that he's got their back. And I think that part I totally understand. There's probably a better way to do it than the way he did it, but he doesn't seem to be too upset about it and unapologetic for what he said.
So let's dive into the caping for Russ part of this, the 3-dimensional chess that we always ascribe to a coach who does mean what he says, but also says something to try and support or talk through the media. What do you think he was doing there with Russ?
Yeah, I think there's part of it. Here in Denver locally, Russ is obviously taking a beating, and he played absolute garbage football last year. I mean, it was really bad, and I'm not saying that Nathaniel Hackett wasn't a part of that, because he was, but there were a lot of other circumstances that were going on. I mean, when you come into an organization and you hire a quarterback and you make that big trade, and then you say, oh, by the way, you get to do whatever it is you want to do. You get to have your own office. You get to have your own quarterback coach that comes into the facility and sits and studies with you. You have all these other things that are happening that really, to me, put Nathaniel Hackett in an unenviable position. I mean, it really, you emasculated the guy before he even had a chance to coach, because he truly wasn't in charge. And I always say this just about organizations in general, Rich. It's one thing to appoint a guy a coach. It's another thing to empower a guy a coach. And that dude was never empowered to be the head coach. As a matter of fact, I mean, I reached out to him week 6 and said, hey, listen, man, if you don't get your stuff together, you're going to get fired. Like, this is that bad. And we have that kind of relationship. But, yeah, I don't ever think Nathaniel Hackett was truly empowered to coach this team. And you know what? It just kind of spiraled out of control. So I know one thing about Sean, and I've had a lot of conversations with Sean over the years, just about game planning and how you go about, doing that and trying to, take something from him to use in my own career as a broadcaster. And one of the things he said to me that really resonated just a couple of years ago, that we sat down and had this meeting. And I said, what is the key to game planning? If you're doing what I was doing, he just said, from my standpoint, there are a lot of young coaches that look at a juicy matchup and they're like, oh my God, I just got to go after that matchup. That's a great matchup for us. But in doing that, sometimes you expose your own weaknesses. And he said, my first responsibility as a coach is to mitigate my own weakness. So if I see a juicy matchup, but I know it puts my right tackle in a position that he can't win, I have to get away from that. And a lot of young coaches will say, hey, man, we just got to hold up. We just got to hold up. And, the third time they try to go after that matchup, it's a strip sack, fumble, touchdown the other way, and you end up losing by 3. And he goes, those are the things that always entice young coaches. The things you have to learn as a coach is to mitigate your own disaster first. That's the number one priority. And I think, Nathaniel Hackett and a lot of young coaches get caught up in that.
Well, I mean, obviously, if you just want to, I guess dissect last year, the week 1 where Russ was actually cooking, and we thought, okay, the Russ in Seattle is showing up in Denver, and Hackett knows how to dial it up with him, and then all of a sudden, out comes McManus for a 90-yard field goal, right? And then red zone turnovers that were not Hackett's fault start coming up a cropper, and then their top running back blows out his knee, and things start devolving, right? But the whole office on the second floor stuff. When I read about that, I was so surprised because Russ should know better, right? Like if he's going to have a space above the locker room and the Broncos say yes, that creates a hierarchy that blows up chemistry on the spot. Certainly if you're not going to start winning football games, too.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, it's amazing what you can get away with or what people will put up with when you're winning, and how scrutinized you become when things aren't going your way and you're not winning. So yeah, it's one of those things that everybody kind of just looks side-eyed at and go, really? Like we're scoring 14 points a game or 13 points a game. We're just kicking field goals, and that's kind of where we are right now. You've got your own office to come up with losing a game 12-9. No, thank you.
Right, exactly. So I guess the reason why I'm bringing it all up now is because, Sean Payton actually did dredge it up a little bit last week, or a considerable amount. So the two questions I have for you, Mark Schlereth here on the Rich Eisen Show, is there anything you'd be willing to share about your conversation week 6 last year with Hackett? How did he respond when you called him up and say, hey, man, this is red alert time? How did he respond?
Yeah, we had these conversations. One thing I will say about Nathaniel Hackett, and I really like Nathaniel Hackett, and I think he's a damn good coach, last year notwithstanding. One thing that he never did, not one time, was put one of his coaches, one of his players. He never threw anybody under the bus. He accepted full responsibility for what was going on, and never in all my conversations with him, even here recently as a couple days ago, has he ever thrown anybody under the bus. He has taken full responsibility for everything that went down, and it's one thing I always have appreciated about him. But we had that very honest relationship back and forth with one another about, hey, dude, like you got to take control. I always felt like this, Rich. If I was ever coaching, if I was going to get fired or things weren't going well, I was going down swinging. It's going to go. It's going to be on me. And at the end of the day, I had the same approach as a player. Hey, man, if I wasn't good enough, then that's one thing. But I was going to control everything that I could control, and it wasn't going to be a lack of effort, lack of preparation, lack of study, lack of anything. It was just going to be that I sucked. And I think I can live with I sucked, right? The one thing I didn't want to walk away from the game is going, gosh, I wish I would have. I can honestly sit here and tell you, I couldn't have worked out any harder. I couldn't have studied anymore. There's nothing I could do. I was never late to a meeting. I never missed a meeting. I never missed anything. And it was one of those situations if I wasn't good enough, I can live with that. But I was never going to cost myself a job based upon work ethic or those things. So I wanted to walk away with a thing with zero regrets, and I was able to do that.
Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.